Okay, this lecture is going to be about stress and what it actually is. And we're going to look at this in a biological standpoint because stress does have biological implications. And then we're going to hopefully be able to tie the whole stress issue back into forensics, which deals with how people react to stress. So the first thing we need to look at is that stress, by definition, is going to be a departure from homeostasis of a biological system as it is caused by something called a stressor. Now, of course, if you need a refresher from general biology as to what homeostasis refers to, we can look at it as this equilibrium of many physical and emotional factors that permit the body to maintain a steady state of health. I always think of it as maintaining a constant body temperature. Our bodies remain constant for the most part unless there is a stressor, such as a virus, a viral infection. So some very common stressors that we may see here, they could be physical, such as heat and cold. They could be chemical, such as deprivation of oxygen. They could be physiological, exercise can cause stress. They can be psychological, such as, or emotional, such as fear, anxiety, or they can be social, which are personal conflicts. See that one a lot here at school. And what happens here is your body will react to those stressors. So given a stressor, your body is going to do certain things. So for example, if you're put into a hot environment, you're going to sweat. If you're going to be in a cold environment, your body may start to shiver. Muscles contracting will raise heat. When you exercise, you will see an increase in your heart rate as well as your breathing rate. Sometimes the stress response will result in what we call a fight or flight response. All of these are biological responses to these things that we refer to as stress. The types of stress vary. One of the things you need to note that sometimes stress is good. One type of stress is referred to as a eustress. It comes from good sources. So it could be that, physical activity raises your heart rate, breathing, and that can also result in a euphoric feeling, especially when your body is producing something called endorphins. That's why generally when we exercise afterwards, we tend to feel better. Another example could be that you win the lottery. Well, you get excited, or passing a test here at school. Those are all good forms of stress. That's one of the things I think people forget, that stress necessarily, we look at it as a negative, but it can also be looked at as a positive. But on the other hand, stress can be a negative source. Here, the mind and body can react kind of negatively, such as being kidnapped or just just any kind of negative influence that we may have here. The two types of distress could be acute versus chronic. So in acute stress, this is usually very short term. It's due to such as meeting the deadline for getting an assignment turned in, or you may overexert yourself in exercise and result in some kind of injury. The symptoms of this type of stress are usually tension, headaches, some kind of back pain, stomach problems can result from it. Heartbeat irregularities can all be forms of acute stress. Usually they will go away over time. Time is usually the biggest healer here, assuming that the stress isn't constant. Now, if it is a prolonged, constant stressor, then you can lead yourself into some serious issues. You could have some forms of high anxiety. They can all result in some kind of physical health issues, such as heart disease, mental illnesses, etc. And usually it's because it's long, ongoing, and it doesn't stop. And we don't see that it's going to stop. There doesn't seem to be a solution to it. Generally, when we respond to stress, we look at something called the general adaptation syndrome, or GAS. This is what also is referred to as the fight or flight system. It's generally a universal response to stress, and it does involve two major body systems biologically, such as it involves the nervous system as well as the endocrine or the hormonal system. When we go through this GAS response, stage one is we will have some kind of an immediate reaction to a stressor. It could be physical or psychological. And what happens is our body generally releases a hormone called adrenaline. And this adrenaline will prep our body to either fight or flight. We'll either stand up and deal with it, confront it, or we'll run away from it. But most of you know you get this adrenaline rush. It'll cause your heart rate to beat faster. You'll start to sweat somewhat, and you'll want to do something. 9 times out of 10, our response is to run. Okay, so in the fight or flight, some of the physiological things that will happen is you'll see an increased heart rate, the blood vessels will constrict, you'll see dilation of the vessels to the heart, so you can get more blood going to your heart, lungs, and muscles. Your spleen will actually contract. You'll start to convert glucagon into glucose in the liver, so you have more energy. You may see some sweating. The dilation of the airways will happen, so you can get more air. Your digestive activities shut down because your body is going to need blood elsewhere besides your digestive organs, such as your muscles, your brain. And you'll start to see an increase in blood pressure. In stage 2 of resistance, this is also named the stage of adaptation instead of the stage of resistance. Again, during this phase, if the stress is continuing, your body will start to adapt to it, and changes at many levels take place in order to reduce the effect of the stressor. So the body has run out of its reserve of body energy and immunity. You will start to see mental and physical and emotional resources will start to suffer. A body experiences something called adrenal exhaustion. You lose that increased little burst of energy. Your blood sugar will start to decrease as the adrenals become depleted, leading to decreased stress tolerance. Progressive mental and physical exhaustion will occur, and you can get sick, and you could actually collapse. In both cases, your body cannot adapt, and thus exhaustion follows. So when you're no longer able to deal with the stressor, your body basically, in a simple way, just shuts down. So what happens here is that when you get a stress response, you will see an increase in coping with the stress. But if that stress continues, then your body will exhaust and kind of shut down. So one of the things is, if it's an acute stressor, usually it'll stop, or the stressor will stop somewhere in here and you'll be okay. But if it's long term, then we have to figure out other ways to deal with the stressor, because your body physically cannot complete this. So physiologically, this is some of the different biological organisms or organ systems that will start to happen. I just found this slide to be interesting because it shows you what happens biologically with all of the different systems of our biology that we go through. When we go through a stress, we can resist it for a time and either recover from it, or we can, if it's too ongoing, we can be exhausted by it. The components of our nervous system that actually deal with stress is we have the hypothalamus, which is located about right here in our brain, the pituitary gland, and the adrenal glands, which are located down above your kidneys. These all will contribute to how we respond to stress. So it's a combination of our nervous system, which is the hypothalamus and pituitary gland, and the endocrine system, which is primarily the adrenal gland. And what we will see here is that when the stressor hits, our brain will start to activate certain components. This is high-level biology, so I'm not going to hold you to it, but I just wanted to show you what can happen. With the hypothalamus, its job is to regulate our body temperature, our fluid intake and output, our food intake and output. So when you feel hungry, it's because your hypothalamus is telling you you're hungry, because it's monitoring your blood sugar. So when it drops, it says eat more. It also monitors fluid levels. So when you're thirsty, your hypothalamus is doing that. And stress can affect how this works. Very simply, with this system here. So what we see here is that our nervous system controls a lot of our other body organs. So, from, our sight down to our digestive system, to our heart rate, these are all controlled by our central nervous system, and it can influence how we perceive stress. The endocrine system, these are the hormones that are released, and they're usually released based upon our nervous system directing their release. So when the hypothalamus detects stress, it's going to begin something called the alarm phase, and that's going to pump out, causing your adrenal system to start pumping out that hormone, which is going to cause all of these different physiological changes in your body when your adrenal system. So you're going to see changes in blood pressure, changes in your blood clotting factors. Your metabolism can go high. You're going to need to eat a lot of food to keep up a lot of energy. You're going to see your stomach acids actually increase. So this is where we get heartburn, or acid reflux can occur during stressful. A lot of times acid reflux is a biological response to stresses. It's your body, it's reacting to whatever stressor may be out there in your life. So as you can see here, that when a stress occurs, we're going to see all these biological changes, but then eventually if the stressor is, dealt with and it alleviates, such as I have to take this test, it's going to cause some anxiety, test taking anxiety, but once I get through with it and I pass, then your body can recover. But if it's something ongoing, some stressors continue constantly, such as we're under the threat of a pandemic, a virus that is making us deal with things in our life differently, and it doesn't seem to ever stop. That can lead to some effects that we have to deal with in our life. So these are just on this slide here, it just shows you some differences in what hormones will do to your body. I'm not going to hold you to it, but you can see that different types of hormones, like an epinephrine, that's also called adrenaline, that will cause that fight or flight response. The production of insulin can change your blood glucose levels in your blood, the blood sugar levels, all sorts of different things can be maintained here. And then finally, this chart just shows you kind of the same thing. So stress is out there, and how we deal with it and how our body responds to it, I think, is an important thing. So on the assignment that you will be doing is you're going to be asked to look at stress in your life and how does it affect you? How do you feel when a stressor occurs? So when you move on to the checkpoint assignment, let's look at that next and see how it goes.